Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Muslim Street. This is your host, Hina Lotus. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a super exciting episode planned for everyone. Just to get housekeeping out of the way, this is the Muslim Street. We are on X. We are on Instagram. We have a website, themuslimstreet.com. Please follow, like, share, subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. Yeah, it's fine. But anyways, essentially, we're doing a episode today, and it's on Palestine, Iran, and LA. I have three amazing Palestinian activists from Tampa, my hometown. I'm really excited to have them on. And I don't know if a lot of people know this. I did want to kind of go into the backstory of the Muslim Street really quick before we get started. We do have a multitude of questions to go over. I don't even know if Lama knows this. So the reason that I'm actually the co-host of the Muslim Street is actually indirectly because of Lama. I had reached out to her, I want to say like a year or two ago, and I had said, hey, look, I was a big political organizer. I kind of fell off the map. How can I get involved? And the first event that she invited me to, I think it was called, I'm going to probably pronounce it wrong. So Lama, please feel free to correct me. But it was at Nida Al-Veda or something. What was it called? Yeah, so it was called Nida. Yes, I'm not an Arabic speaker. As you can tell, we speak Urdu as Pakistanis. But I went to that event and I met Malik, and we ended up sitting at the same table. We had breakout sessions, and he told me about the platform he had, and we decided to start it up again. And now, coming full circle, I am interviewing her as well as two other people who are very prominent in the political organizing scene. Today, I have Ali, I have Lama, I have Faraz, really good friends of mine, super knowledgeable. I'm very humbled to have all three of them on. If each of you want to introduce yourselves, Faraz, if you want to go first.
Thank you, Hina, and thank you for having me on the show. My name is Faraz Shaheen. I am a activist here in Tampa Bay, fighting for solidarity across all struggles across the world, the liberation of struggles. I'm a member of the PSL, which is the Party of Socialism and Liberation. Um, Other than that, that's all I kind of have to say about myself. I'm like the newest member. I feel like I don't have a whole lot to say about my history, but I am proud to fight, and I have a deep understanding of the Palestine, my family's roots in Palestine, and etc.
We absolutely love you, and we're excited to have you on, Faraz. Ali, if you want to introduce yourself as well, we'd be super humbled.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to be on. Hello, everybody. My name is Ali. I'm a Palestinian organizer here in the Tampa Bay area with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And I'd like to actually apologize because my voice is a little bit shot. I'm actually just leaving a protest that we just held, an emergency demonstration to say no to this war against Iran that Trump just launched last night by bombing the nuclear facilities inside of Iran. We had a very good turnout in downtown Tampa, and I was leading chants, and unfortunately, my voice is a little bit shot. But on that note, I've been organizing in the Tampa Bay area with PSL for the past 5 years, and I especially have been playing a big role in organizing protest and solidarity with Palestine, especially since October 7th. And I am very glad to have been invited onto this podcast because there is so much that needs to be said. Education is so crucial because if we don't understand our history, it's going to be used against us. So I'm very excited for this episode.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited too. You know, the Muslim Street is independent journalism for Muslims by Muslims. We obviously are kind of different from the typical Muslim podcast scene because we're very anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist. We like to platform voices that you don't hear from often, and obviously, the chances of any of us being on CNN or Fox is like very, very low. And even if they invited us, I probably wouldn't go. But that being said, this is why we're creating our own media, we're creating our own journalism, we're creating our own platforms. A system, of course, I say this in every episode. This is something Malik taught me. A system built to a process is never going to give us the tools to liberate ourselves. So we have to create it and, have like our own resources. The Muslim Street is part of that. And I'm glad to have your voices as well. That being said, Lama, saving the best for last. The reason I'm on the show, actually, if you can introduce yourself.
Thanks. Flattered. Hi, everyone. My name's Lama. I'm a Palestinian organizer here also in the Tampa Bay area. I've been consistently organizing with Dream Defenders. So I'm part of the Bay Area Dream Defenders. Dream Defenders is a Black-led social justice organization that believes in a good life for all. So we are looking to build that out. And we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but there is like an inextricable connection between Black and Palestinian liberation. So I am thrilled to be part of this organization and to do my organizing through that. And I'm so glad that you and Malik got to connect through the Nida al Wahda event that we had. That was kind of like the intention, right? We build like community, and people autonomously are able to create their own networks and build out their strategies as well. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, we all play a different role in the revolution, and I think that's a testament to that. So, first and foremost, I wanted to give my gratitude. I'm super humbled that you invited me to that, and I'm, able to do what I do so I can platform voices like, all of you. But let's get right into it. We have a lot of questions, and obviously, if people have questions or comments, anything like that, please comment below. I can always do a live stream later with them for another episode, or maybe do like a YouTube or Instagram live or something, because we want to make sure that whatever questions people have, no question is too little or too small. We want to make sure we're getting the right information out there from qualified people like all three of you. But that being said, can Ali give me a little bit of information just for anyone, any newcomers per se? Can you tell me a little bit about the history of Palestine? You don't have to start from the very beginning, but pretty much how we've gotten to the point that we are at right now. I think this is, really important to discuss, because with everything going on with Iran, not to undermine what the Iranian, population and the neighboring countries are going through, but I think Gaza right now is unfortunately kind of being pushed under the rug. And I don't want that to happen, because the genocide is still active. People are still dying. I think Israel is actually taking advantage of the situation and making it significantly worse, because eyes are off that. So if you can kind of go over the history, I'd really appreciate that.
Definitely. How deep would you like me to go? Because I don't want to spend the entire episode just talking about the history, and we definitely could. Perhaps I could just start
maybe
with,
like a brief summary, because I do want to bring you guys back, inshallah, to kind of go over Palestine, not so much on a current events level, but maybe like a historical level, maybe talk about Nakba and things like that. But today I want to, really focus on current events, because there's a lot going on, a lot of disinformation, and I want you guys to be part of the change in that regard. So just maybe like briefly go over how we got to where we are right now.
okay, yes. So I think it's important to start with the occupation by the British first. So after the First World War in 1917, Palestine at that time was a province of the Ottoman Empire. And the British were on the victorious side of that war, and they dismantled the Ottoman Empire and made a deal with France and Imperial Russia to slice up the Middle East into various zones of control that they would colonize. And Palestine fell under British occupation. Uh, and while Palestine was under British occupation, uh, the Zionist project, which was a project, a right wing project of European Jews, basically to say to the British Empire, look, uh, we are interested in this colonial venture where we will go out to the Middle East, to a place that we deem as being void of civilization, of not having civilized people. We will go there. We will be the bastion of European civilization in the Middle East. We will settle this land, and we will be your greatest allies, and your like effectively an extension of your empire. Will be your colony in the Middle East. So Britain encouraged migration from Jewish peoples across Europe into Palestine. And this ultimately came to a head after the Second World War, when Britain, as well as a few other imperial powers, unilaterally, without any input from the indigenous Arab population, decided that a state of Israel was going to be established, and that they were going to be given essentially 2/3 of the land of Palestine, a lot of the most fertile land, most of the coast of Palestine was going to be, you know, given away. And at that same time, uh, was a campaign of dispossession, violent dispossession, violent depopulation, violent ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from their villages. And what we call 1948 Palestine, and what is now called the State of Israel, was launched by Zionist militias, and that is the what Palestinians refer to as the catastrophe or the Nakba. And this is really the moment through which a lot of our current politics as Palestinians revolves around, is the expulsion of 700,000 Palestinians from their land, the beginning of the catastrophe, because the catastrophe is still ongoing to this day. And again, this was a completely unilateral decision. It was not, Arabs were not given a say. Palestinians certainly were not given a say in how this was going to be set up, how this was going to be partitioned. And many Palestinians became refugees, but held on to the hopes that they would return to their homes, and they carry the keys to their homes, hoping to return. And unfortunately, don't have all the time that I would like to really go deep into this, but essentially, the Palestinian cause was tied with the Arab nationalist cause, which was the idea that Arab countries should assert themselves as independent nations, independent from the British Empire, independent from the French Empire, independent from the new American empire, and that was represented through countries like Egypt under Nasser, and Iraq and Syria. And uh, this led to Israel attacking those countries in 1967, and what they call, which should ring off some alarm bells with what has happened over the past week, a preemptive attack on those countries. It was not a preemptive attack. There was no attack planned. And during that war, which is the 6 Day War in 1967, they also conquered and occupied all of the remainder of Palestine, the West Bank, as well as the Gaza Strip, as well as parts of Syria and the Golan Heights. And that has been the status quo essentially since 1967. Um, there was a there have been there's been sustained resistance from the Palestinians who are living under occupation. There has been attempts at some sort of a negotiation through the Oslo Accords in '91, which would have seen the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. But that clearly has not led to a Palestinian state. All it has led to is the Palestinian Authority, which essentially functions as a colonial administration for the Israeli state. Um, and in more recent times, we saw in the Gaza Strip, uh, Israel completely pull out because the resistance there was too strong, as well as Hamas being elected to power in the Palestinian Authority, leading to a civil war kind of within the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas essentially having to all move into the Gaza Strip. And that is when Israel began their siege on Gaza, which has not ceased until this day. Um, and the siege on Gaza is really essential to understanding why October 7th happened. It's essential to understand that the people of Gaza have lived through so many Israeli bombing campaigns, a situation where every single calorie has been controlled on what goes in. The Israeli generals call that putting Gaza on a diet. Uh, and every few years, like I said, there would be a bombing campaign. They would call that mowing the lawn. And the people of Gaza have tried various measures to end this occupation, to end this siege. Flotillas have been organized and been, raided and destroyed and redirected by the Israeli state. Not talking about the flotilla that happened a few weeks ago. I'm talking about flotillas that happened over 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, I
Uh,
didn't know that.
yes. And actually, they raided one of these flotillas and killed several of the people who were on board trying to break the siege on Gaza. Um, and just to sort of get towards wrapping things up here, two of the most major events that have happened since the escalated genocide began on October 7th was the Great March of Return protest, which saw people march because the 70% of the population of Gaza is descended from people who were displaced from 1948 Palestine during the Nakba. So they decided that they were going to march to the border with Israel to basically demand the right to return to their homes, which is affirmed under international law. Palestinian people want to return to their homes. And they peacefully marched to the border. They set up tents to try and send a message, to the entire world that they're living under occupation. What was their reward for doing this? They were shot by Israeli snipers, and not just the men, women, and children who were shot marching. I mean, we're talking about disabled people who were shot. We're talking about journalists who were shot. We're talking about doctors, medics who were shot trying to provide medical attention. And all of that, all of those conditions that I'm talking about in Gaza, on top of this, over 75 years of occupation, of ethnic cleansing, led to October 7th, which was a resistance operation. It was a prison break. Gaza was the world's largest open air prison before October 7th. And this was a prison break. And in response to that, Israel is doing what Israel always does, which is collective punishment, to punish the entire population, to make the entire population.
And collective, not to interrupt you, collective punishment goes against international law. I really want everyone to understand that. When people talk about international law, collective punishment is one of the first things that they discuss as illegal under it. Please continue.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I mean, and it really puts that into perspective. That's illegal under international law in terms of war. It's a war crime. But when we talk about the Great March of Return and the shooting of medics, the shooting of journalists, those are illegal in war. But that wasn't a war. That's even worse than a war crime. That's a crime against humanity. And to go back to October 7th, what we have seen since then is Israel trying to complete the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. They are trying to exterminate the population of Gaza, and we know that the plan being pushed by Trump is to essentially expel the entire population of Gaza. They're floating Libya as a location where they might expel them to. But they want to complete the Nakba. They want to settle Gaza, just like they're settling the West Bank, just like they're driving people out of the West Bank to this day. And of course, they are doing this just like how the Zionist project began, with the sponsorship of the United States as the world's dominant imperial power today. So I spoke for a long time, but I'm sorry. It was a very difficult question, and I'm sure Lama and Firas will have things to add.
No, I'm glad you did, because if we don't get through all the questions, you guys have to come back. So thank you, Ali. I really appreciate that. And I always want to start out with that question because I know there's a multitude of people who I think they consume way too much MSM, or they talk to family and friends who maybe are not educated on this. So I always come into the assumption that we may have people who are organizers themselves, identify with the ideology that the Muslim Street has. But there's some people who are genuinely curious, and I want this to be a space where, both ends of the spectrum can learn and grow. But that being said, thank you so much, Ali. Lama, the next question is actually for you. The Muslim Street, we really heavily focus on, obviously, anti-imperialism, anti-capitalism, especially when it comes to oppressed Muslim groups, but humanity as a whole. And one thing that we, touch on a lot, especially when Malik does episodes, is Black liberation. They often say Black liberation and the Palestinian struggle is intertwined or interconnected. Can you kind of, go into detail about that and your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question because I think it has such deep roots in so many different levels, in so many different ways. I'll start off by sharing just a couple examples of how that is, and maybe dive in like a little bit deeper. But we see Black and Palestinian solidarity from people like Samih al-Qasim, who is a Palestinian poet who they found the writings of his in George Jackson's prison cell after he was murdered. And they attributed the poetry to George Jackson, only later realizing that it was actually written by a Palestinian, right? Like the experience is so similar. There's so much of an overlap that it comes through in a lot of different cultural work. including cultural work by June Jordan, who has also written a lot about Palestine. And one of her poems, Moving Towards Home, ends with a line of, I was a Black woman and now I am Palestinian, because the struggle is so similar. It is so interconnected. Even people like Malcolm X himself said that, like, the Palestinian struggle is not just a cry for justice, it's a blistering battle for the most fundamental human rights that every living soul on this planet should inherit by birthright. Right? So we've seen this historically across the last 70 plus years of the Israeli occupation of Palestinians, because we see our struggles in each other. When Palestinians come here in the States, we notice the separation, the degradation, the brutality, the violence that is inflicted on the Black population here. And when Black folks go and travel to Palestine, they see the exact same things. The same tactics are used, not just in terms of how we're separated. There's specific laws that are applicable to certain groups, and in, like, literal, whether it's gentrification or, sorry, redlining that's used here as a way to distort and take away power. But there's also the same kind of concepts in Apartheid 48 that restricts Palestinian movement and things like that. So for us, we know that this is so intertwined, that our struggles, it's more than just solidarity. It truly is a shared struggle. And when we fight for Palestinian liberation and when we fight for Black liberation, we're not looking for, like, half-hearted attempts. We are looking for things to get gritty and messy and hard. Like, we know that it's going to be hard, but we know that when we fight, we're literally fighting for each other's freedom.
Yeah, no, and inshallah, I hope that in our lifetime we see that, because, and this is probably something we should do for another episode. In the Ummah itself, as opposed to working as a collective, I have seen so much anti-Blackness. I have seen so much, like, anti-Arab sentiments or anti-South Asian sentiments. I still get it till this day, and I'm like, wait, I'm on your side. Like, free Palestine, hello. But it's weird that as an Ummah, as opposed to coming together as a collective and understanding that Black liberation, the Palestinian struggle, the multitude of other issues going on, Kashmir, the Rohingyas, I mean, the list goes on, Sudan, as opposed to coming together and working as one united faction, that we separate ourselves, and the same, white colonialism, that we see dominate the world, right? We kind of internalize it and then practice it on each other. And it's a form of conquer and divide. But again, totally different, not a totally different topic, a topic we would probably need to discuss in another day, in depth. My next question, though, kind of getting back into it, is they say Palestine is like a religious issue, like it's Muslims against the Jewish population. Would you agree or disagree with that? And I just kind of want to hear your thoughts, whoever wants to discuss it.
I can jump in here. So yeah, I mean, I think the total narrative that the conflict is based on religious roots, or is based in the history of conflict of Arabs, and this is a 100-year war between Arabs and Jews, or a 1,000-year war, whatever the narrative is these days. I think that's just perfectly manufactured for them to give consent to continue their occupation and colonization, and manufacture consent for these settlers to continue in their settling action, like what they're doing, and through their colonialism, right? We need an excuse to come up with, Arabs are barbarians, they're barbaric, and they don't have rights for gays or women, or for any members of their communities, and we need to come in and we need to liberate them.
And
we
that's
need
called
to be
pinkwashing. That's pinkwashing genocide, just so you guys kind of have like a term to it. Yes, go on. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's perfectly fine. Yes, that is what they call it. It is pink washing. But in other ways, it's also, just also plain up whitewashing, right? They're trying to kind of push this narrative that without the Western intervention, there would not be civilization in this region of the world, right? And the West has this dominance. It has the authority to bestow civilization, right? And it doesn't just happen. We can't have civilization without the West for some reason. And so we see these narratives that are written to manufacture consent for war, for genocide, for starvation, all these campaigns used to ethnically cleanse Palestinians from their land, truly just to reap the benefits of unpaid labor, or extracting resources, or whatever it is that they want to take from the land, whether it be like the olives off the trees themselves, or they want to take the water out of our rivers themselves. They're manufacturing consent, and they're trying to find a way to fit their narrative. And this is as much of it as a religious war, as much as we could say that when the colonists came to the continental, Americas, and the natives here in the United States were, kind of, genocided and expelled and ethically cleansed in their own way, calling that a religious war. It's kind of like, well, is it? It's not at all. We have the hindsight now to look back and be like, no, Manifest Destiny is a total fabrication that was also manufactured consent, right? To kind of cleanse the indigenous population. And this is the exact same thing that we have happening today. The only difference is they're using a religious kind of aspect to it.
No, that makes sense. Not what they're doing, obviously, but your answer. But I wanted to kind of get into current events. We have a lot of moving pieces right now. Something that I hear about very often when it comes to discourse, not just in MSM, but even amongst, human rights activists, or, the Muslim population, and just in general. I think there's a misconception. It's I think riddled in or written in basically like racism, I guess you could say. But there's a lot of people who say, well, Jordan, the Gulf states, you have Egypt, who are denying entry and aid to Palestinians. We just had that situation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, where individuals that were coming from the most recent flotilla were being beaten in Egypt and not allowed to go into Palestine. Ali, I actually want you to kind of get into this. Why are these countries functioning this way? Are they innately, anti-Palestinian because there's something wrong with Palestinians? Is there any other issues going on? In my opinion, it seems like they're sellouts. And if they are, what are they gaining from being sellouts, essentially?
Okay, this is a very good question. I think we should actually take a little bit more time to answer this. So bear with me here. We were talking about earlier the flotilla that was launched. There was a very brave humanitarian flotilla launched by different forces inside of Europe on the left and on the progressive side. Greta Thunberg was one of the people who was on this flotilla, and they were intercepted by Israel. They were all arrested. They were brought to Israel. They were deported. And Greta Thunberg, when she was released, she was interviewed by the media, and one of the reporters asked her, "Why do you think all these countries in Europe are afraid to stand up to Israel?" And she gave a very simple answer. She just said racism. Um, and I think that's partially true, but I think it's deeper than that. I think the more fundamental thing here is that, like we were talking about in the history section, Israel is an extension of the American empire. Israel is a client state of America. Everything it does.
Would you say it's a proxy state? Because we hear that a lot. Do you consider it personally like a proxy state?
I would. I would say even more than that. It's a client state. It is an extension. It's so interlinked with the U.S. in a way that no other country on the earth really is. Every single weapon that they use is either coming from the US or designed in tandem with the US. They cannot do what they do on the world stage without the diplomatic shielding of the US. Recently, there was supposed to be a talk in the UN about really trying to implement the two-state solution, and the US basically threatened these countries and said, if you do this, like, you're going against American interests, and they were forced to back down. And I think that really is what it comes down to. It's not that those countries in Europe are just racist. They certainly are. that racist, and there's a lot of racism in those countries, but rather that the governments, the ruling classes in those countries, are on the side of the U.S. So in a way, Israel is on their side as well. They enjoy the benefits of American imperialism, of the exploitation of the global South, and so they enjoy the benefits of Israel going out and attacking countries like Iran, countries that are sovereign, that are not opening up their resources to be exploited by the West. So when we come to talking about these countries in the Middle East, it's a little different because these countries are in the global South. Uh, they are not considered. They're not white countries, right? These are countries that are formerly colonized. Uh, However, in countries like Egypt, in countries like Jordan, in countries like Iraq, well, Iraq, unfortunately, it has nothing to do with the Iraqi people, but rather U.S. intervention. Um, these are countries where the governments and the ruling classes are a very small minority that benefit from collaboration with the United States. They reap the benefits of sponsorship by the US. Egypt receives a lot of military aid from the US. Egypt is ruled by a military clique right now. Um, Countries like Saudi, countries in the Gulf, these countries, I mean, obviously they're not democracies.
And
Uh,
not to interrupt you, but I do want to bring up, and we are trying to do an episode on it very soon, inshallah. Saudi and the UAE, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not mistaken, are very connected to what's going on in Sudan right now. So everything is very interconnected. Whenever we say we're not free, we're not all free until Palestine is free, this is a testament of that. All these different countries that work together to imperialize, it's not just Palestine, it's other regions as well. But please continue.
Yeah, no, that's a very excellent point. I'm glad you interrupted me because Sudan is another area where they have proxy forces going off to see who is going to be in control of the resources in Sudan, who is going to be able to project power in that region. And ultimately, that is the reason why these countries are not coming to the aid of Palestine. Actually, they are used as tools. American air bases, American military bases are all over the region, in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Saudi, in the UAE, in Egypt. And it's from those bases. We can be sure it's from those bases that U.S. aircraft are taking off to intercept missiles and drones launched from Iran in their war against Israel. So these countries are complicit, absolutely. But it has nothing to do with the people in those countries, actually, because the mass sentiment of the Arab people is to stand with Palestine. The Palestinian cause is the cause of Arab nationalism still. But the problem is that Arab nationalism has been crushed with the help of not only imperialism coming in and like Israel did, attacking countries that were sovereign, like America is doing right now, attacking countries that are sovereign, like Iraq, intervening in Libya, intervening in Syria in order to make sure that the regime that they were opposed to is gone, and that a new regime, more amenable to American power, is installed. Now we see the same playbook at play in Iran right now. And so it's not just imperialism, it's that there is a comprador class, a very tiny collaborationist class within each one of these countries that is happy to sell out their people, that is happy to sell out their countries to the US so that they can reap the benefits. And this is the same tactic that empires have used throughout history, whether it's the British in India ruling through divide and conquer and appointing a few princes, to the European colonists ruling in Africa, boosting up one ethnic group and boosting up tribal leaders from one ethnic group to oppress the other groups. It's the same thing that's happening now, where yes, a very tiny clique of collaborationists and compradors are in control in all of these countries, but ultimately the Arab people are going to assert themselves one day or another. We saw a glimpse of that in the Arab Spring, and it was crushed with brutal violence in all of those countries that were listed out. Bahrain, Saudi, they crushed any protests very brutally, because they know that their regime is on shaky ground. Um, but ultimately, the Arab people, I think, are going to stand up and say no more someday soon.
I think this is my personal take. I think it's inevitable because, when you look at Israel, they have the Israeli like expansion project or whatever they call it. You see them right now taking parts of Syria, right? Undetected, right? And then you see them bombing Lebanon. You see them actively bombing, Iran. We just had the United States, join in on the action. And now that's going to probably get NATO involved. Let's see what happens. That's just a prediction. But essentially, if Palestine is not freed, this is now going to affect the entire Swana region, which would be the entire, as a lot of people call it, the Middle East and North Africa, and who even knows, South Asia. I think Pakistan has been kind of in and out. Like they just had like talks. I think Asim Munir, who's the head of the military there, just had lunch with Trump, and then the next day they're bombing Iran. So all these different Muslim countries, right? Pakistan being nuclear, Iran, being part of the resistance, right, or the biggest part of the resistance, in my opinion. All these countries are being involved, and that's because I think the amount of effort that the global community should have had in reacting to, not just reacting, but in being part of liberating Palestine, it hasn't been there. And now that we're seeing everything unfold, we're realizing, look, until Palestinians are free, we are not all free. And I think the Arab population in these neighboring countries are, seeing that right before their eyes. But that being said, we can always go on and on about these topics. I hate the fact that we have to like condense it. Inshallah, I can have you guys back on so we can kind of go in depth over these issues. But since we're talking about alliances and the resistance, in your opinion, because I've heard conjecture from so many different groups, and I think it's important to amplify Palestinian voices when it comes to this discussion. Does Palestine have any allies? When we talk about whether it's governments, countries, Iran is a big one. When we're talking about even resistance groups like the Houthis, we have Hezbollah. What are your kind of thoughts on that? Do Palestinians have any true allies? Lama, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I can get started and then pass it to one of my co-hosts to add. Yeah, I think we can't think of things in terms of governments, right? Because I think just overall, especially
I just didn't want to speak on your behalf, let's be honest.
yeah.
Okay.
Just uplifting what Ali was saying earlier. It is the masses. The masses are with Palestine because the masses truly understand. But in terms of like the groups that we are seeing, we do see Yemen and the Houthis. We have Hezbollah in Lebanon. We have Iran right now. There are, I feel conflicted in saying like there's truly like one or like a consistent strategic ally, because sometimes like things can shift based off of what they need. But so far, like historically, these groups have been like anti-imperialist. And at the end of the day, if that's how you are moving and that's how you are working, like you are in line with bringing down a settler colony. So I think like that's one of the values that as long as like there's organizations that are moving towards that, bringing down these imperialist powers, they do align. And so some of the biggest ones that we're seeing are from those that historically there's been, some parties in Iraq and Syria and even like some in Jordan, not as the government, but certain parties within Jordan itself. And so we see ebbs and flows in that. But I'd say that's the most important like line that we look for, the anti-imperialist line. And I'll pass it off to one of my co-hosts to add a little bit of flavor.
Yeah, would either one of you like to add anything, Ali?
I'll be very brief because I've spent a lot of time talking. I'll just say, while anyone who is fighting empire, like Ghassan Kanafani said, where no matter where you are, we are fighting the same empire, right? If you strike a blow here, if you strike a blow there, you're aiding in the same cause. Ultimately, when it comes to Palestine, the Palestinian people cannot wait on someone else to come and save them. The Palestinian people are going to be the ones, have to be the ones to liberate themselves. That's ultimately what it means. We cannot wait for Iran, Hezbollah, Yemen, as brave as each one of them have been. We cannot wait for them to liberate us. Palestinians have to liberate themselves.
No, I absolutely agree. And the reason I asked that question, you hear a lot of people who say, well, Iran is doing it for selfish purposes, or, the Houthis have X, Y, and Z going on. They're not a true, alliance. At the end of the day, and I don't know if it's the right thing to say, but this is just how I feel. I feel like the ends justify the means. Whatever reason that they're doing it for, if it's helping the Palestinian people, let's first liberate Palestine and then get to what their true, the real reason they're doing it. I would like to think, maybe as someone who's, I can't believe I'm saying this at the time that I am, but as an idealist and someone who's a very positive person, I would like to think that they're doing it for Palestinians. But if it's not for Palestinians, if it's helping Palestinians in what they're doing, then that is more than what most individuals, groups, factions, governments can say. And for that, I do, want to applaud them for however much they have contributed to, Palestinian resistance. And then that being said, let's kind of take a step backward, because I do want to hear, your personal perspectives on this. We have Iran all over the news. I think majority of the individuals who are discussing it, even within the Muslim circles, don't really understand Iran, like on a geopolitical level, the history, what's exactly going on. A lot of people are also not connecting Palestine and Iran. Does anyone kind of want to go over the connection between Iran and Palestine for anyone kind of coming new into this on a geopolitical level? For us,
I actually feel like Adi is more equipped to answer this one. I'm totally comfortable answering a lot of these questions, but this is one that I feel like Adi totally should have.
take the mic, Ali. Go for it.
I definitely can. So, when it came to the spheres of influence of the European empires, Iran was controlled by the British, especially their oil. And I say this because it's very important to understand how Iran got to where it is. Iran, most of their oil in the 1950s was controlled by the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. That is now called British Petroleum, BP. They're still around. They are still one of the largest oil companies. And there was a prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, who ran on a platform that said Iranian resources should go towards developing Iran, should go towards building our education system, should go towards developing our country, taking us, advancing us forward. And ultimately, the CIA, as well as British intelligence, cooperated to launch a covert regime change against Mossadegh and to install the Shah in Iran, the monarch, as a dictator, who ruled over Iran pretty brutally. But the West loved him because he was like an outpost for them. The oil was still flowing, the profits were still flowing to the West, and he went along with imperial interests. And the people of Iran suffered very greatly for that. So much so that they united vast swaths of the Iranian society. The Iranian Revolution in 1979 was not just people who were Islamic fundamentalists rising up against the state. This was a wide swath of society: liberals, intellectuals, socialists, communists. All of these different forces joined together to overthrow the Shah. But the current Iranian state, the organized clergy and Shia, they were the most organized force, and they were the ones who took power. But ultimately, it's not really like in the eyes of the U.S. It has nothing to do with the fact that they are a theocratic state. It has nothing to do with the fact that they are an Islamic state. It has nothing to do with the state of human rights in Iran. They didn't care about human rights under the Shah. They did not care if women were going to school. They didn't. It's
If
not.
they care so much about women's rights, why aren't they doing anything about Saudi? I just want to throw that out there. No one is able to answer that. I'm like, you guys are allies with Saudi. Saudi has some of the craziest women's rights issues in the world, literally.
It's
But
precisely
yes, go on.
that. It's
Yeah.
precisely that. It is the primary question: is where do you stand in relationship to imperialism? Are you on the side of the U.S.? Will you toe the line? Will you go along with American interests, or are you going to try and assert your sovereignty? That is what the U.S. cares about. And Iran, they went down a path of independence. Their political project is not my political project. Their political project is not the project of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that is why they are under attack. Because they want to assert their sovereignty, as they have the right to do. They have the right to assert their own sovereignty and to demand that respect. Um, and I think that is what ties them together with Palestine, and that is what colors their foreign policy. Is Iran is willing to ally with forces in the Middle East that are also opposed to American imperialism, because American imperialism is what's trying to choke, that is what has been trying to choke Iran out, whether it's through backing Saddam Hussein in the Iran-Iraq War, using chemical weapons provided by the United States against the Iranian people in one of the bloodiest wars of the 20th century, or whether it's the economic sanctions regime that has been in place, that has tried to stifle economic growth in Iran, as well as make the ordinary lives of ordinary Iranians harder. That is what Iran is facing. So they are willing to support. They are willing to throw down with anyone in the Middle East that is also trying to assert their own sovereignty. That is trying to stand against the American presence in the region, and Israel, which is an extension of the American presence in the region, which is
they're the nucleus of the axis of resistance. I know that gets thrown, that term gets thrown out all the time, but they're the nucleus of it. Whether people agree with their ideologies or government or whatever the case may be, when it comes to the funding of Hamas, when it comes to Houthis, when it comes to Hezbollah, it is Iran that's behind a lot of it. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And I think a lot of people say, oh, Iran funds terrorism, but let's go back to what terrorism is defined as in the US. We're slowly learning that terrorism is anything that doesn't align with US foreign policy. It has nothing to do with it being ethical or not. These, quote unquote, factions or groups are resisting imperialism, and America lives off of that. And so I think people really need to understand that the word terrorism, and I mean, there's a multitude of words. We should probably do an episode on that as well. But there's all these buzzwords that get thrown around in MSM, and it scares people. But when you're resisting imperialism, you're resisting, basically a multitude of individuals in the West or organizations or systems that are taking your resources, killing your people, placing sanctions, bombing, and, the list goes on and on. If you are resisting that, that doesn't make you a terrorist. Anyone would do that. I mean, we live in Florida. Like, we have laws where if someone shows up at your door, you can just shoot them. That's essentially what's going on in the Middle East. So if we can do it, why can't they? That's something I want people to think about. But I do want to kind of get back into current events. We're just in the middle of so many moving parts and things going on. Lama, Faraz, if either one of you guys want to answer this, we have also seen all the protests going on with, in LA. We saw what was going on actually on a national level with the protests, and we see what's going on with ICE as well. I do want to remind everyone that ICE was also very active under Democratic administrations. It's not just Republican ones. I do want to remind everyone that MSM just tends to cover it a little bit more when Trump is involved. But that being said, if you're kind of able to discuss what's going on and how that's also interrelated with Palestine as well.
But also, you want to get started?
I will start, and I'll have a very brief analysis on this, I think, and I'll pass it off to you because my understanding, I want to make sure that we're capturing the whole image here, and I feel like maybe you, as a more experienced organizer, Lama, may be able to provide more insight into. So, from my current, perspective, what I understand is, ICE and not just ICE, but the police in the United States, they take a lot of pages out of the book of the Israelis, occupation forces, right? They look at the way that Israel treats Palestinians, and they kind of they take some notes, right? they they basically they actually literally train with them, first of all, and second of all, their end goal is the same, right? It is the repression of the mass movement for liberation, the mass movement of the struggle against the repression of the government, right? Or the regime or the occupying state or whatever flavor you have in which region you live in, right? So that's my current understanding of it, and I know that there is a direct connection between the way the LAPD, the TPD, even NYPD, all these various police departments across the country here in the United States that are being trained with the Israeli occupation forces, and are taking pages out of their book as to how to crowd control, how to repress these masses. How do we throw a smoke bomb efficiently, or whatever the heck they might be talking about behind closed doors. That kind of stuff is happening, and it is a mutual like back and forth conversation. And that's pretty much all I pretty much can have to explain about it. Lana, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the starting context. And just to what Firas is referring to, the official name of it is the Deadly Exchange Program. So this is literally where the police departments, including ICE, literally trains with IOF to share tactics. There's so much overlap as well. I do want to start off by saying that what we're seeing in LA is not just like a spontaneous riot, right? Like we're hearing so much discourse about, oh, people in LA are rioting, and maybe they're like, there is ICE mention, but I don't think people recognize the level of violence that ICE is inflicting on these families. Like ICE is going and have arrested more than 113,000 people. And mandating detention for like 60% of the population, which means that these people don't have any kind of quote unquote legal due process. And I put that quote unquote because probably a separate episode, but there's nothing like
You guys just need to join the cast at this point, but yes,
right?
go on.
I think so. But there's like nothing legal or just about the system that exists here. And just in the exact same way that they deport, they detain these folks and don't have any legal due process, is almost exactly the same as what we refer to as administrative detention in Palestine. This is draconian laws that allows the Zionist colony of Israel to arrest any Palestinian that they want for 6 months at a time without any trial or charges. And what they keep doing is they extend it. They have the 6 months, and then they extend it another 6 months, and then another 6 months, and they claim it is based off of secret evidence that they cannot share with the public. And just like ICE is kidnapping and tearing apart families, the IOF is doing the same thing. And this is not just with men and women and adults, but also with children. So they're using very similar tactics in both what's happening in Los Angeles and across this entire country for xenophobic reasons and ways. And, can't forget neglect capitalism as well, like the need to control the population. But these are the exact same things that are also happening on the ground in Palestine.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of symmetry. Whenever we see oppression in various different countries, including on our own soil, there's a lot of symmetry between the oppression that you see within the United States that you see elsewhere. Because we have to understand that when the US basically goes into other countries and there's this heavy amount of violence, a lot of people don't understand that that always comes back to bite us. Because once, the US population becomes immune to this violence, it's in a way consenting to the fact that this violence is okay. And so when this violence is then practiced on US soil, I think a lot of people don't understand that the consent was already given when we said it was okay to bomb Iraq, when we say it's okay to bomb Iran, when we say it's okay to have a genocide in Palestine and not even call it a genocide, according to a lot of people. When we give our consent to that and become immune to that, it's indirectly or directly going to end up affecting us, especially with our taxpayer money and, just our daily lives and the rights that we are given, but are given in theory, but are not exercised to the magnitude that they should. But that being said, we are kind of coming in, at the end to the live stream. If each of you kind of want to take a few minutes to, go over ways people can contact you, a little bit about your organization. I'm sure there's a multitude of people who are watching. Inshallah, they're mobilized. They want to get involved with the different movements and organizations you're part of. If you want to list out your, email address, your socials, websites, anything that they can do to contact you in case they want to interview you, collaborate with you, connect with you, have any questions. And then if you also want to go over ways that you think people can contribute into organizing and helping. I mean, obviously, my platform is very different than what you guys do. And I want people to understand that, if protesting is not your thing, you can donate money. If you can't donate money, then please, talk about it on social media, bring it up, with friends and family, read about it, get involved, go to different educational events. There's, places you can go to at the masjid. There's political organizations, there's non-political organizations. It's an entire, spectrum of things. So there's nothing that you can do that's not, that's too much or too little. It's just whatever you can do, please contribute to it, because we can't have a revolution with people who are, sitting there docile per se. But Ali, if you want to kind of go first and give your closing thoughts, we'd be super humbled.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that I want to say for people to get involved with is we really need to take a stand against this war that's being launched against Iran. It's really has the potential to be a global war, a devastating war. Millions of Iranian lives are on the line, as well as, this is going to hit back at home as well. All of the money that's going towards that war could be going towards things here at home. So if you are able to, there's going to be a National Day of Action this Thursday with the Answer Coalition. And I really recommend people to check that out. I believe it's answercoalition.org and find an action near you. They're happening all over the country. Just a little bit about my organization, very briefly. I'm a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and we stand for the liberation of all oppressed people. And we stand for a new political and economic system that puts people over profit, to put it simply. If you're interested in checking out what we're about, we got a website. We're on social media, pslweb.org and PSL Tampa Bay, or PSL National on Instagram, and PSL Tampa Bay is my particular branch here in Tampa. I really appreciate you inviting me on the show, Hina. I hope I didn't talk too much, but you gave me some heavy questions.
No, I'm just scared that Malika is going to take you on as the co-host and I'll be kicked out. But I mean, outside of that, I think you did phenomenal. We love you. We appreciate you. We've been trying to get you on for weeks, and I know you guys are super busy. So thank you for taking the time. Lama, if you kind of want to go over, your closing thoughts and ways people can contact you or your organization.
Absolutely. Just to stress on what you were sharing earlier, like the importance of doing whatever you can. Every single one of us has a lane. And I just want to stress that again. There's not enough that we can do. And especially us in the Ummah, like with our faith tied so much to social justice, like it is our duty, it is our responsibility, not only to stand up for Palestine with the Palestinian people, but to stand against any injustice anywhere. And so I encourage everyone to find your lane and do what feels right for you. And make sure you also understand the connections, because as we were talking about, what's happening in Palestine is linked to what's happening in Los Angeles, and it's linked to what's happening in Iran and Sudan and the Congo. Like, everything is connected. So be a weirdo and make that web, because that web it's not a conspiracy theory. It really is connected. So now that I got off on my little rant, so to get more involved in Dream Defenders, as I mentioned earlier, it's a Black-led social justice org. We believe in a good life for all. And for us, a good life comes from having your needs met. We believe that we all deserve safety, and safety is from having homes and clean water and food, not from police and prisons. So we are working on campaigns across the country to make sure that funding goes to focus on those needs being met, rather than these violent and state-sanctioned institutions. To learn more about Dream Defenders, you can find our website at dreamdefenders.org. And then if you're interested in specifically Tampa Bay, we are the Bay Area Dream Defenders on all socials. But whatever you do, whether it's PSL, whether it's Dream Defenders or something else, this is not the moment
Muslim Street.
to stand
Yeah, go on.
We got Muslim Street. Yes, we have so many different options. So whatever it is, find your lane.
Thank you so much, Lama. We're super humbled. And for us, if you want to kind of go over ways people can contact you and your closing thoughts, we would love that.
Absolutely. So I think a lot of what I'm about to say is going to be like very similar to what Ali just said because I'm also a member of the PSL. I know that I don't have that on my tagline here. I am also an organizer for the PSL. Like Ali said, we are a socialist party that believes that the solution to capitalism is socialist transformation of society, right? And so I want to tie everything together again, and it's not just U.S. hegemony that is, what's linking Iran and L.A. and the ICE raids and Sudan, but really it's capitalism as well, right? And we need to focus, and as long as that the listeners and people that moving forward understand that capitalism is the cause for this deteriorating world that we're currently living in, and this collision course that we're kind of setting the stage for. Capitalism is what causes imperialist war. Capitalism is what is deepening unemployment. Capitalism is what is, accelerating poverty. It is the all of the inevitable, kind of like milestones that we kind of have like arrived at, in our society today is because of capitalism. And we need to really have a strong push for the younger generation and the next generation to understand that and to fight for a social society that does not rely on these systems that we live in today. And if people want to connect with me, I would say the best way is through the PSL, pslweb.org, or our local Tampa branches, PSL Tampa Bay, and you can connect with us that way on Instagram.
Yeah, and if you want to, if you're watching this and you want to connect with them on an individual level, please reach out to me. I can always get you connected to any of them, all of them. I think it's very important. They do so much work in Tampa and even on a national level. And I'm glad that we're able to collaborate with them. Inshallah, we can again very soon. But that being said, you are watching The Muslim Street. I am your host, Hina Lotus. Big shout out to Malik Aziz for starting The Muslim Street, and also to Lance Furb. He's our producer. He's in Ghana. We love him. He does so much for us. We'll see everyone next Sunday at 7:30. We will have Malik Aziz on, and we have special guests for you. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful night. Salam.